Soldiers, march! 1, 2, 3, 4. And you know, then that way it'll save me a lot of effort, and somebody else will be doing my work, and somebody else will be being the sheepdog, and I'll just be able to enjoy your company. Amen?
Amen.
Thanks. And so, what we have here is Jerusalem Archaeological Garden. What it actually is it goes back through the ages. So, the top level that we see here is Muslim. The year is 638 when Jerusalem is invaded. So I haven't talked to you all yet about the periods of history in Israel, but Israel is covered by many periods of history. Now Jerusalem itself was destroyed 17 times and rebuilt 18. Okay, 17 times. It's just one of those facts that you should remember. 17 times destroyed, rebuilt 18. One of these times is this top layer, almost top of the Muslim period, early Muslim era. But let me start 4,000 years ago, just for your benefit. 4,000 years ago, Abram. We are. Give me 5 minutes.
5.
4,000 years ago, Abram, later Abraham, came here and tithed to Melchizedek, king of Salem. That is just down the hill from us. You guys saw where the bus dropped us off. On the left side of it is the city of David. Nowadays it is outside the walls. But in the times of David, in the pre-David times, Jebusite, during the time of Abraham, that was the entire city of David, that very small enclave there. Psalm 122, Jerusalem is a city built compact together. Okay? Small city down there. That is all Jerusalem was in those days. Built there because of the spring of Gihon. The only water source of Jerusalem in the ancient times was there. City of David grew in this direction, came up these steps here, and it grew in this direction to include the Temple Mount during the time of Solomon. Solomon built the first temple, and here there were Solomonic buildings. Later on, after Solomon, the nation was split, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. You guys remember, every good king in the book of Kings and Chronicles is compared to David, every bad king to Jeroboam. We'll talk more about that in the north, because that's Jeroboam's kingdom in the north. Now, when you see here, after the period of Jeroboam, Rehoboam, continues the Hezekiah, built the city, increased it, built a magnificent addition to the city on what was called the Western Hill. The Western Hill is also the area where the house of Caiaphas, the high priest, was, and some other things. The palace of Herod was over there on the west. Now, so that brings us up to the time of the Hasmoneans, which is about 250 BC, and then we get to the time of Yeshua, which is approximately 0, okay? We talked about Caiaphas, the high priest, and the Roman period. That's the early Roman period. During the year 70, Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. Titus's 10th legion, the temple is destroyed and burned. And the remainder of the people who want to fight leave and go to Masada to fight with Elazar ben Yair from Masada. The rest of them just basically give up. Some of them make a sort of a peace treaty with the Romans, and then the Sanhedrin continues in Yavne and later on in Sipori in the Galilee. And later on it was disbanded around the year 200. There's a second rebellion of Jewish people against Hadrian during Hadrian's time. Why? Because Hadrian was putting pigs on the Temple Mount. Hadrian built the temple of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and sex, here on the Temple Mount. He built a temple to Aphrodite and other things. And so the Jews rebelled again. Rabbi Akiva Bar Kokhba, and Hadrian conquers brutally and washes this city with the blood of Jews. The streets literally ran with blood. Most of the Jews are then gone. Most of the nation is dispersed. God always, the entire history, this nation has been overrun more times than I can count. Over the entire history of the universe, there always, ever since Abraham, always was a small remnant of Jews here. In the most severe times of diaspora, when all the Jews were dispersed, there still was a remnant of Jews here. The only people the only people who have always been here. Okay? Hadrian renames this country Palestine, Provincia Palestina. Hence the name comes from there, from his intention to curse the land. Name it after the Philistines and erase the name of God. We talked about that on the bus. After that, it's a Roman until 325. 325, Helena, the mother of Constantine, comes here. Christianity, as we know it nowadays, the official Christianity, comes from that time period, from the Council of Nicaea from 325. The change of the worship day from Sabbath to Sunday and things like that were done by Constantine in 325. Constantine in the year 311 fought a great battle in which he was established as emperor when he won the battle. He fought the battle after he had a dream. He saw the Alpha and Omega, he had it painted on a banner, and he won. So we have this story with Helena and Constantine. Helena built a lot of churches here. For example, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built the first time by Helena. The Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. A lot of these places have become shrines, which are not very nice to be in spiritually, to say the least. Maybe the location is correct, maybe not. I'm not going into that. But the places have become strange, let's put it that way. And so after the Byzantine period ended for a very short time in the year 614, there was a great invasion by Persian armies. They destroyed every single Christian church in the land, every single one, with the exception of Bethlehem. Church of Nativity in Bethlehem was never destroyed. It's the oldest functioning church. Why was it not destroyed? There were pictures in it of the three wise men, the three kings from the east who brought babies for the gifts for the baby Yeshua. Now they looked like Persian kings, kings for the east. The ignorant Persian soldiers thought this is a shrine to our people and didn't destroy it. They did destroy every other church in the land except that. So then we have the Persian period lasted for 14 years until 628, in which the Byzantine Emperor Diocletianus, you don't need to remember the name, recaptured the land. He recaptured the land. This land was Byzantine until 638, a huge Muslim invasion. Islam, which you hear right now, Islam started in 622 in Saudi Arabia. A huge Muslim invasion in 638. The country is overrun by Muslims. They stay here until 1099. 1099 Crusaders. There's a sort of strange revival in Europe. Let's say it was a revival, but it was taken by human beings in the wrong direction. And so on the way to the promised land, the Crusaders actually came to liberate the holy sites from the Muslims, marched around synagogues, burning them with all the Jewish people inside them, marching around with a cross saying, singing Jesus loves you. And so, you know, that is a pretty hard thing for the Jews, and that's one of the reasons it's so hard for Jewish people to come to know Yeshua, the Messiah, nowadays. Because when you speak to them, they go, what? Christians, they've been butchering us for centuries. Crusaders were in the land until 1298. In Jerusalem until 1167. Salah ad-Din kicked them out. You might have seen the movie Kingdom of Heaven. That's a Hollywood version, but done pretty well about that piece of our history. So, after 1298, 1265 in some areas, the Mamelukes. The Mameluk were Kipchuk tribesmen. You know how in Russia you have many small nations, Dagestan, Chechnyans, all those types of people. Mickey's mom, our driver, is Chechnyan. And so, we have the Mamelukes, they come here, they take over the land until 1517. The Mamelukes are the ones who blocked the eastern gate. Up until then it was open. The Mamelukes are here till 1517, the Turks come. In 1532, the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, named after Solomon, Suleiman the Magnificent, rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. He told his architect to build the walls, including the city of David down there. But the architect wanted to do a military-wise thing. So he built the walls here, where they are nowadays, easy to defend. But he disobeyed the Sultan and lost his head. By Jaffa Gate are the graves of the architect and his assistant. And so these walls are as we see them nowadays. And we have here the last conquest is General Allenby in 1917. Before the birth of Israel, Balfour Declaration happened. Allenby comes here with the Anzacs and the British and the troops in World War I. Allenby was a Christian man. Allenby got off his white horse in Jaffa Gate and walked into the city saying, only my Messiah has the right to ride a white horse into the city. The next time Jerusalem is captured is 1967, the old city. Because in 1948, when Israel was divided by the British mandate with the agreement of the United Nations or the League of Nations, Jerusalem in its entirety, the whole old city, was given to the Arabs. And the Jewish quarter fell to the Arab legions. They attacked, and the Jewish quarter fell to the Arab legions. So the next time we have a Jewish presence inside the old city is 1967. So except for these 19 years, there always was a Jewish presence in Jerusalem or the area. Always, always, always. Questions?
I believe, and a growing number of people believe, that the Garden of Eden was also here. Because there's actually, you probably walk past a plaque and it actually says this is where God created Adam and Eve. And it's because, basically, I believe it because of that verse, and several times it's in Chronicles and Kings, and it says God has chosen this place that his name shall dwell there forever, and forever is backwards, present and forwards. And there's also another, I thought I was the only person that believed that until I met another person, and she said, I believe the Garden of Eden was on the Temple Mount. And I said, well, why is that? Because of 2 Chronicles. And she said, no, because in the book of Genesis, the tree of life is in the Garden of Eden, but in the book of Revelation, when Yeshua comes back, the tree of life, it's here. So, you know, most people think that the Garden of Eden was over in Babylon, but that's Satan's territory. This is God's place here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, and we're going to give you hopefully a little bit of time. If we get through the security quick enough, I wanted to give you some time to go down to the wall and pray. But let's see where we're going to meet first of all, at the flagpole.
Yeah, at the flagpole, 5 minutes.
Well, no, let's go through security and then meet at the flagpole.
I'll show you the flagpole.
Okay. All right. So you lead the way. You're on.
All right.
If you take the 7 arches there, that is a church, and in the back, that's a hotel, 4-star. And then you go in the back, and that is where the white tent established in 2004. Prayer tent.
So here is how the world was in the beginning. Okay? This is how the Temple Mount was when God created the world. Okay? This is how it looked like. This is Mount Moriah. Down here is the city of David. The 3 valleys, the Kidron Valley, the Hinnom Valley, and the valley. Just the valley. Terapia, right here. These 3 valleys form the letter Shema. Still waiting on somebody, but that's alright. Now, what happened? On this mountain is where Solomon builds the temple. Okay? Do we see it like this nowadays?
No.
Do we even see a mountain?
No.
No. This is the mountain, how it was. After Solomon, the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. There's the reforms of Hezekiah and Nehemiah, okay? The rebuilding of the temple. Nehemiah comes and restores it, but along comes Herod and builds the most magnificent temple. Why? Herod was obsessed. Herod was possessed. Herod wanted to be loved. He thought if he builds a huge temple for the Jews, they'll love him. So Herod removes part of the mountain. Okay? He just removes it. Makes this into a quarry from which he researched and from which he took stones to build the mountain. And what does Herod do? He builds a huge frame around Mount Moriah. Huge frame around the entire mountain. Okay? This is what we see today, the Western Wall, sometimes called the Wailing Wall. Okay, this is what we see today. However, the Western Wall starts from here and ends here. The Western Wall is actually over 500 meters long. But what we see today is an area of 60 meters. Okay? So, King Herod builds this and builds a temple. We have fairly accurate descriptions of the temple from writers like Josephus. Okay? Now, here's the temple, and this is how Yeshua would have seen it. There were some buildings here from Solomon's period, and later on it rebuilt from the Asmoneans. There were buildings here, here, here. Mostly the temple in all its magnificence and all its height. What happened was the mountain was enlarged by King Herod, and he built this huge platform. This is how it was. Along come the Romans, Titus's 10th Legion, they destroy the temple. They even destroy some of the surrounding walls. And this area is desolate. It becomes a heap of rubbish. For many years, all it is a heap of rubbish. If we look at Byzantine maps, 1600-year-old, 1400-year-old maps, for example, the map found in Madaba in Jordan, what do we see? This doesn't even exist on the map. The center of the world during the Byzantine period is Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some of you who have been there might call it Church of the Unholy Sepulchre, because that's what it's tragically become. Plus the sepulchre in there is 400 years old. But it's alright to go and have it represent for us. But the minute we start worshiping the sepulchre itself, we're in trouble. So that became the center of the world, Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This didn't exist anywhere in maps. Now, along come the Muslims, and the Sultan Omar builds this contraption here. Why 8 sides? You guys weren't listening too good on the idiom phrase. Sorry? Copying the 8 beatitude churches of the Byzantines. Copying it. It's a nice design, copying it. Up here, there's all kinds of things written in Arabic. Some people go spiritual and they see demons in the writing and all that. There are demonic things written there. For example, there is only one God, his name is Allah, and he has no son. It's written there. So things like that. Okay? So, later on, the Muslims said, no more going up to worship here. We will build our houses, the Muslim quarter, on the same level. So they filled up this valley, one of the 3 valleys, the Tarabian Valley. They filled it up and built what we see nowadays, the Muslim quarter. So we have here the Western Mall, we have the archaeological park that we saw where we had our bagels, and this is the Muslim quarter, and it extends to here. All this is also covered by the Muslim quarter. Any questions? Alrighty then, how about we remove this city thing? Yes? The Temple Mount wasn't a tell. It was part of Mount Moriah. And we shall continue on our tour. Here? No idea. It never was made very flat. Okay, it was built on the old ruins, arches. Do you understand? A big wall, arches, and yeah, and it was built. One other thing, our walk is going to be level. Okay? However, the mountain slopes down. So although we're walking level, we're going to meet bedrock around this point here. We're going to actually walk on the street from the time of Yeshua when we get to here. So that will be fun. All right then. you've looked through the window or looked over the rail, let others have a turn.
Just different levels.
There's the Western Wall. Yeah, so the temple from there is.
Okay, so you've looked through the window. Now what are they looking for? They're looking to get down to the time of Solomon. Okay? Why? Political reasons. Of course, archaeology is fascinating, interesting, and archaeologists, many of them have two reasons for living: to prove or disprove the Bible. Okay? Archaeologists will come up with like all kinds of things, like the walls of Jericho. Where are they? Have they crumbled down or tumbled down? Have they turned to dust? What's going on? And archaeologists spend fortunes looking for the walls of Jericho. Many things like that. But here it is also political, so that we can find a connection of the Jewish people to this mountain, because the Muslims try to claim that we have no connection to this mountain and we need to be out of here. These arches were the arches built by the Mamelukes, and these over the valley. Down here is the valley, the road at the bottom, 20 meters deep. Down here is the valley, the Shirapion, the cheesemakers valley. And the arches were built so that the houses will be on the same level as the gold container. Okay?
I wonder if there's swords that are found in here.
Guys, this is the model of the temple Yeshua would have been to. The model of the temple that Herod built. So the walls were built around the mountain. These are the walls. This small area is the western wall. I will show you in a minute with light pinpointing everything. But just first of all, this long thing with the pillars here is the royal portico. This was the place where the moneylenders sat. And this is where Yeshua overturned their tables. Inside, right where my finger is pointing out, see the shadow of my finger? Okay, that is the wall of partition. Now remember that the wall of partition didn't exist when Solomon's temple was there. Solomon said, as for the foreigners, 2 Chronicles 6, 32 and 33, we read it yesterday. As for the foreigners, he invited anybody who has a faith in God to come and pray at the temple. As did Isaiah, my house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. Condition, believe in God. Okay? But later on there was a wall of partition. The Gentiles were only allowed up to that area. This became known as the Gentiles' court. But this isn't God's intention. He wants Jew and Gentile in one body. But this became the Gentiles' court. Nowadays, when I take people up to the Temple Mount, there are actually remains of the wall of partition. Okay? The wall of partition. At the end there you see a fortress. That is the Antonia fortress. That was Pontius Pilate's place. That was where the Roman cohort was. Why were they there? So they could look onto the temple and make sure the Jews are not rising rubble, okay? Not up to no good, not raising rebellion or anything like that. So, nowadays, we do not have this kind of facility to look at how the Muslim rabble-rousers come on Friday. People like the Sheikh Raed Salah, who is the northern Islamic sheikh. He brings down 200 buses at a time in critical times like Passover, Easter. Okay, Easter, never mind the name, it's after the goddess Ishtar, you know all that stuff. But let's say the Feast of Resurrection, okay? Why? He says, sure, we're just as important. Why should only the Jews and Christians celebrate during that period? We are just as important. He brings 200 buses from the north and they raise riots here. And the police close streets and everything for them. And it's a big balagan. Spiritual warfare in Jerusalem is an incredible thing. The Armenians have a procession, half Jerusalem is closed. You can't get through. The Russian Orthodox, another half is closed. Every time some of the alleyways are closed and you got to find alternative routes. So, spiritual warfare. So this was how Jerusalem was. Now, you guys see the lens? Yeah, you see the lens? That's the Western Wall. That's what we see nowadays. Okay? The Western Wall, the Wailing Wall.
Wow, that's doing that.
Come up, you see the Muslim quarter. The Muslim quarter seems to be stuck now. Good job. It's being resurrected even as we speak. So this is what we see nowadays. We were standing right here. We were standing at the Western Wall Plaza. So you see that the depth of the wall goes much deeper. Remember, we looked through the window and we saw how deep the excavations go. So the Western Wall Plaza, this is the archaeological park, and that there is the Muslim quarter. Okay? Now this, now I've opened the Muslim quarter, and this is the tunnel we've walked through to come in. That little light that I just turned on, did you see it? Yeah. That's where we're sitting now. Okay? Down you go. This is when we look through the window. This is the depth of the excavations. What they hope to find, I told you, are remains from King Solomon's period. Because King David's period, the city didn't extend up to here. King Solomon built the Solomonic expansion here. And these are the southern steps, what we call the southern steps, where Yeshua would have gone up to the temple often, where Paul sat and studied under Gamliel. And those are the gates down there. And here are tunnels that they used to go up those steps. Thank God for favor. He's going to take the other group down and let us finish here.
So what period was Solomon built?
Sorry?
What time was the Solomon temple built?
Solomon's temple was built 3,000 years ago.
2,000 years?
3,000.
2,000 before Christ.
3,000. Sorry?
2,000 before Christ.
1,000.
No, 1,000 before Christ. 3,000 years ago.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Ago. 1,000 before Christ. Okay, what you see here is the tunnel along which we will walk. Alright? And you see the orange lights going down, that's the window we were looking through. What you see here is the mountain. So bedrock. So look, the mountain goes. And you remember the quarry that I showed you, how they shaved off part of the mountain. That is here, where the Antonia fortress was built. Right around this area here is where the temple, where the tunnel meets the bedrock, and where we will be walking on the street from Yeshua's time period. Now, when we are standing here, I'll make sure to point it out to you, like David said, this is opposite where the Holy of Holies used to be.
Hang on a minute, you're on.
I'm hanging. Tell me when I can let go.
Hang on.
We have 2 minutes, David.
Okay, good. The reason why the Jews pray at the western wall over here in that area is because that's the closest they can get above ground to the Holy of Holies, which is, you can see where the tabernacle is. But as we walk along, and Yaron will point it out that there may even be Jewish people praying there today, they stand right in front of where the Holy of Holies is, because that is the physical closest place you can get without crossing over and going on the other side of the wall, which of course we can't do because they're building a mosque on the other side, aren't they, under the ground. So the reason why the Jews pray at the wall is that that's the closest they can get to the Holy of Holies above ground, but now that the tunnel's open, we can get to this point where we'll come to shortly, and there may indeed be Jewish people standing there praying as well.
So all around the world, people pray facing Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, at the Western Wall, they pray facing the Holy of Holies. In there, they pray facing the Holy of Holies. Yes?
I was going to ask, why was the tunnel built? Was it
The tunnel wasn't built. The tunnel was never built. This is a natural happening. City upon city upon city, 17 times destroyed and rebuilt. Hence, the tunnel just happened. Because you built the arches, you built the city, it just happened. The tunnel was excavated. It was full of junk, but it was excavated.
Have they got the artifacts for the new temple?
Sorry?
The new temple that they're going to build.
We'll talk about that. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, George.
Okay.
That's tomorrow's
I thought it was
project.
down here somewhere.
No.
How long has the tunnel been open?
The tunnel's been open since 98 or 99. Partially.
Yeah. And actually, when they did open it, there was a big riot here.
Yeah.
Because what actually happened was, originally the tunnel went a certain way, and then everybody had to come back. So of course it was a bottleneck. But there was an Arab souvenir shop towards the end, and the temple people, the tunnel people said, "Let us make an exit through your shop to get the people out." And the Waqf, which is the Islamic organisation that controls the area, they said no way. So the Jewish guys decided, okay, well, we'll just turn the corner and open it up there. And there was a riot, and I think 10 or 15 people got killed. Which is silly, because somebody could have made a lot of money if all these tourists going through their shop. But that's how much they hate us and try to stop us from doing these things.
See the crack between the rocks? My dear son, the crack between the rocks. There you go. Now, you go to the other direction, please. No, that's the size. I'm teasing you, that's the size. My friends, if you look between these two lovely ladies, you see the size of one rock. One rock. There are 4 such giant rocks in the wall. Those are cornerstones. That is on which the whole structure. You guys remember a mountain peak, around it an entire frame, yeah? Holding all these arches together, okay? Holding this entire huge platform, holding this huge heavy temple without falling outward, without collapsing, without anything. These phenomenal rocks were the foundation stone, kind of, the cornerstone. Who's our cornerstone? Yeshua, correct, Yeshua. You guys could get used to saying Yeshua while you're in the land. You could call him Jesus in your church, I have nothing against that, but while you're in the land, it's good to call him Yeshua, that's his name. Yep. So that is the size of one. Anybody fancy a guess? What does it weigh? 1,000,000 tons? 70 tons? 2 more guesses.
1,000 tons.
1,000 tons? 500. Hey, awesome. Did you read that somewhere? Very good guess. It's actually 573 tons calculated, because the depth of the rock, 3 meters, the height of the rock was about 3 meters, the length of it was over 10 meters. Okay, when you calculate, and the density of this kind of rock, you get the tonnage. So, how did they get it here? They rolled it down here from the quarry, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, but they rolled it down from the quarry. How did they place it so precisely? The wall still goes down, about 10 meters or more down. And the wall went up another 20 meters or so. How did they place them so precisely? Notice every row is exactly 1 inch inward from the previous row. Every row. Why? That is for 2 reasons. One, aesthetics. If the rows are exactly in the same place, when you approach the wall, it looks like it's going to fall on you. It's pretty scary. This gives it the effect that it's not going to fall on you. 2, earthquakes. This area did have lots of earthquakes. The country was destroyed a few times by earthquakes, and this is stability. Okay? So, another question, other than how they moved it. Now, the smallest rock in the wall is 2.5 tons. Okay, the smallest. How did they move? What are these? Nothing to do with moving the rock. This is from a much later period. A much later, you guys know rebar. When you build a house and you pour concrete, there's rebar, correct? This is rebar. These things. Here's one more. Later on, when this became a water cistern, this whole area became a giant water cistern once the Muslim quarter was built above. They put these and they poured the then times concrete, a kind of a mortar, a kind of something to keep it blocked so the water wouldn't seep out through cracks in the rock. So this is what held it from slipping down from the slippery rocks. This was rebar. So this is from a much later period, being told. Everything here is Herod. The mark of King Herod is to frame the stone. Okay? Each stone of King Herod is framed. That's how we know these are Herodian stones. That doesn't answer the question of how they were so precisely placed. We don't know. But there's a theory that most architects and archaeologists agree with. Some of these stones were collapsed. Not the hugest ones, but some of the stones were collapsed by the Romans, by Titus's 10th Legion, when they in fury stormed the temple and destroyed so much. Hence, when this was collapsed, what happened was like this. They found copper discs at the bottom of the stone. So what they're thinking is these were copper balls. Lots of little copper balls, and you could move the stone. And when it got to its exact location, you just left it there, and the stone's weight and gravity crushed them and made them into copper discs, plus stones that were on top of them, etc. So hence, that's the only explanation they could come up with, that the copper discs used to be balls, marble. Any questions? All right, you will notice that people put notes throughout the entire tunnel, just like at the Western Wall itself. They put notes. What happens to these notes is they go to Gniza. Gniza is a place where you put old, torn prayer books and Bibles, Sidurim and Bibles, as well as prayers people wrote. So when they fall naturally out of the cracks and they're on the floor and everything, every day they sweep them and put them in bags and put them in a Gniza, a special place where you put prayers and torn Bibles and torn prayer books. It's like a burial place in a sense. They don't burn them.
Oh, they don't?
No. They bury them. They don't burn them.
Okay, just one thing I want to add. One of the lies that Yasser Arafat used to say, and one of the lies that even was present by Mahmoud Abbas tells, is that there never was a Jewish temple here, right? But we can see the evidence. So upstairs what we see, fair enough, that was built by the Crusaders, but this is the original wall. And you can always see who was there first by whose stones were on the bottom, right? So you've seen it with your own eyes that there really was a temple here, and it's underneath the mosque. It was here before the mosque. So you can go back with full conviction and tell me what you've seen.
All those people said.
If you go up a few more.
Okay, here's what I need for you to do. I can't yell here, okay? Just tell people, pass the word along, that we are going to pass opposite the Holy of Holies. You'll see the people praying opposite the Holy of Holies. You may pray as you pass, you may touch the walls, whatever the Lord puts on your heart is okay to do. So please pass the word along, because I don't want to shout. Okay? Talk to the people in the back. Make sure the word gets passed along. Okay? Did you pass the word? Can you say what I just said to the people in the back? Awesome. as deep as your basement. Which palace are you talking? Right here with everybody. Just ask God. Guys, those who haven't looked over the railing, you need to look over the railing. People who guarded are coming in. And if they get granted permission again. Those who haven't looked down here, please come and look over the railing. Please look over the railing. You'll see how far they've dug. Even deeper than when you were here last time, David. They've done some very amazing. It's almost like a mine. See, they have contraptions there, the crane that will go there. So, if you've all looked, we'll continue. Before we continue, at the tunnel, we'll make a couple of stops. At the tunnel, we'll make a couple of stops. Now, as we continue, look underneath you where you see perspex. That is where they have thrown the walls down all over. The Romans threw the walls down. Remember the prophecies of Yeshua. There will not be one stone upon the other, yeah? So you can actually see it through the perspex when you look. Interesting as we walk. Come on. Yeah, modern. By modern, I mean about 1,000 years old. About 1,000 years old. But this is from pre-Heroic. This is the stone quarry where Herod took the big stones. Come hither and yawn. Come hither and yawn. Be close. Don't be shy. Crowd up, crowd up. Love your neighbor. You guys, do you read the Bible as love your neighbor as yourself? Yeah, is that what you read? Well, if you read the real version of the Bible, it says love your neighbor in your space. So, your neighbors, you know, crowd up together for a bit. Okay, we're all here. We are standing. We are standing on holy ground, and I know that there are angels all around. Let us praise Yeshua. Funny Kiwis are, right? I was here with a pastor called Ross Jourdain and his group. Remember David when Ross Jourdain came in? And so the ladies there took off their shoes here because the Lord had come to several of them and promised them that they could walk bare feet and dance bare feet where the Lord was. And that they felt this was a spot. Now, these big paving stones are the actual street from the town of Yeshua, no mistake about it. So he very probably walked here. There are places in Jerusalem, for example, at a church called St. Peter in Valicantu, extremely Catholic church, but it is built on Roman ruins. It is built on the Steps Road that led from Caiaphas' house down to the valley, down to around the pool of Siloam. And hence a road which Yeshua would have walked on many times, as the disciples, a very probable walk from the upper room down to Gethsemane, down that road. So there are a few times when we walk Jerusalem that we do actually get to the time period of the Lord, where we're going down in basements and stuff like that. And this is the street from his time period. Some interesting just facts. Look at these beautiful paving stones. This is a street paving stone. Why is it left here abandoned? Why is it left here abandoned? It's abandoned here. The stone quarry wasn't extended. Everything was abandoned. See, the pillar wasn't even finished. The pillar has still got the ears. No, those ears were on both sides. Here was a tripod made of huge wood, and this was like a crane. You would tie the rope to both ears, and you would lift it with a pulley. What's going on here? You guys might have heard of King Herod. Herod, the family of Antichrist.
Horrid.
King Herod, yeah, the family of Antichrist. This Herod the baby killer, his son, beheaded John the Baptist. His grandson sent Paul to Rome to die, in prison. Obviously God used that in a most miraculous way. He used, of course, Yeshua's death on the cross. He used, of course, John the Baptist's beheading as a witness. And he used Paul in Rome from prison. He did some of his most amazing work in prison in Rome. But that's because he's God. But it doesn't detract from the diabolicalness of the Herodian dynasty. But King Herod the Great, he's called, King Herod the Great died. Alright? Nobody left to pay the masons. They left, abandoning the quarry, abandoning these beautiful stones. Nobody left to pay the workers. The Romans couldn't care less. If it wasn't functional, they didn't deal with it. It's not a water aqueduct. It's not something functional to them. They just abandoned it. What? They didn't care if the Jews had a beautiful temple or not. In fact, they didn't really want them to have it. Okay? So whatever the Herodian masons did here when he died, it was left as it was. Nobody left to pay them.
Simon.
Just for 3 steps. You all right? Good name? Follow the gate. Limestone is slightly wet and it expands. Now, what they would do is they make a hole here. In the hole they put a piece of wood. In the wood, they pour water on the wood. The wood expands and cracks the rock. A series of wood, they crack. Eventually you get a big enough crack to put in crowbars or stonemasons, and you could cut off a piece of stone from the mountain, let it dry a little bit. The limestone is slightly wet, let it dry a little bit, and then you shape it and move it to where it needs to be moved. These are photos that go in the opposite direction in which the stone was rolling. They both pulled it forward, but also prevented it from just going wacko with gravity. They acted as a pulley and as a brake at the same time. Showing in 3 hours, so if you want to make it, stay here and please watch your steps coming down these plastic steps. Watch your steps.
Just like gutter system.
Yeah, Petra's the same. They use the same principle on the walls.
It doesn't like they've been. You see the shapes of them.
These will last a lot longer than sandstone.
In a tree. See the rubbish in those holes. The rubbish is down that. Watch the headroom.
Yeah.
يا مستعجل وقفت كلك.
Move down.
Everybody hear me? Hello?
Go.
Carry on.
Stay back there.
Okay, friends. Okay, we are now inside of what God's mountain. This is inside the bedrock of Mount Moriah. This is an old water channel dug by the Hasmoneans. There were many water channels in this area used for temple worship, used to bring water for temple worship. It could be that the water that all the disciples, that, you know, the day of Pentecost when they baptized 3,000 could have come through this or a different water pipe. But the water coming through these channels were used for temple worship. The stones on top were put much later during the period of Herod. And we are now walking through God's mountain. Some people say when you see wetness on the walls, that's God's tears for His people. So, anyways, look all around you and look up also how tall. And this is cut through bedrock of the mountain.
Still coming down.
Yeah.
This phone goes.
Rob, take a photo of this wall system.
I don't remember this set.
These parts can go to 3 or 4 meters. Well, it's not about wet seasons, it's about how deep flooring the water runs up. If it goes up all the way to the ceiling, it will be rough. It is way more than 4 meters. But the water is up. Sister. What? Mention shrimp in the Holy Land. That's kosher. What's wrong with you, man?
God made that.
What's wrong with you?
God made the
Oh, you're not Jewish. Then.
and all that therein is.
Yeah.
I don't think
I know, I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you. But no, there's no shrimp in there.
I know.
So I want your attention for a few couple seconds. First of all, the cistern. That is part of the cistern complex, built by the Asmoneans, but later on used during the period of Herod, the period of Yeshua as well. On the other side of here, of this wall and that wall, we have the convent of the Sisters of Zion. The year is 1879. Some people say 1884, so don't catch me on the year. But there was a British captain called Charles Warren who excavated piers looking for archaeological proof of the Bible. He got permission from the Turks. The reason the Turks and Brits were friends at that time period is because the Brits and French helped the Turks in the Crimean War against Russia. You guys all remember Charge of the Light Brigade, Battle of Balaclava, and all those? 1854, 1855. Okay? So they got a lot of rights in the city. Hence, he was swimming the cisterns and making maps. Now the maps he made are so accurate, they're still used by Jerusalem municipality nowadays. He made phenomenal maps, Charles Warren, and he swims out into the convent of the Sisters of Zion, who get shocked. to see a man the nuns, they got shocked to see a man in their water hole, and so they had that blocked. So everything you see above us, that is from the time of Hadrian. Hadrian closed these, but they were still usable. There were steps in the other room from Hadrian's period coming down to here. He didn't want to lose the use of the water. There was a big marketplace from the time of Hadrian. Remember, Hadrian is 136. Okay, there were steps and there was a marketplace above us. But that wall on the other side there, that is from the 1800s, built by the nuns so that no more men can swim into the convent. Questions so far? Awesome. Bye.
What did she say? You heard the whole thing. This is the end.
A respectful distance.
I'm not sure. I think there's a group that open the tourist come and they take it together. I have to call and check what they have in English, what they have in Hebrew. So there's a brochure which will have stuff.
He's got 30 postcards for $1.
All different. 30 different pictures, $1.
30 different pictures for $1 USD.
$1.
Right.
All different, $1.
Yeah.